sister. This happened years ago, but I still think about it pretty often. My 3 little sisters, their dad, and I were standing in the checkout line at the grocery store. My youngest sister couldn't have been much older than a year, so I was 10 and holding her on my hip. A middle-aged woman joined the line behind us. She was trying to get my baby sister's attention over my shoulder, just cooing and baby talking to her. I figured her an obvious baby lover, so I turned us towards her slightly as a polite gesture, only for her to start moving closer and holding out her hands. It was happening so fast, I almost couldn't react. I had just enough time to give her a panicked look as she reached out to take her from me, and I shouted,
"Excuse me? Don't touch her! Get away from us!"
At the same time, my stepdad took a step in between us and this crazy woman, asking her what she thinks she was doing. She just got really sheepish and was trying to laugh it off. Instead of backing up, she made her way past us and then proceeded to try to cut us in the line. I think my stepdad would have exploded, if not for the cashier giving this lady a glare and waving us forward. She left us alone after that, and it was super awkward, but the whole experience left us all quite shaken. The woman gave me an off vibe from the start, and I'm really not sure what her intentions were. I think she probably just thought that I would allow her to hold my sister for some insane reason, but who knows? It gives me the creeps anyway. A man knocked on my apartment door because he thought I was a prostitute. I live in an apartment building, and I guess there was a girl with a name similar to mine with long brown hair who moved in, and she was doing dates at her apartment through the internet. He thought I was her and followed me to my apartment. He said he went down to look at the register in the lobby and saw my name. Yes, we have first and last names posted for deliveries, and our names were really similar, i.e. like Kristen and Christine, or Brenna and Brienne. Anyway, he followed me like I said, and then looked at the registry downstairs, and just assumed I was this woman. So, he knocks on my door. I answer it, and he tells me it's his birthday. Now keep in mind, I have no idea about any of this, and so I say,
"Oh, okay. Happy birthday."
So then he says that he would give me $60 to go and hang out with him and his friends, and that if I wanted to party, he would supply it for me, and that he and his friends would pay me for anything extra. I was completely confused. I said,
"What do you mean? What are you talking about? I don't want to go to your birthday party. I don't know you."
To which he replied,
"I saw your ad on the internet and replied, and you gave me this address, and I saw you,"
and blah, 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 blah. Tells me this story like I described in the beginning of this post. I said,
No, that's not me. I'm not a prostitute."
Seriously, so strange and creepy. To be honest, I was still somewhat perplexed until I told a neighbor a few months later, and apparently this woman got booted from the building because of the traffic to her apartment. I'm glad the management didn't get us confused, as we live on different floors. The complaints of traffic were specific to her apartment. Thank goodness. My experience. I got possessed. When I was about 12, me and my family moved into this big 7-bedroom house. It was weird. I had a front and back porch, downstairs and upstairs bathroom, and 2 loft bedrooms for each of the main bedrooms. One of them had ladders up to it. We never really went in it. It was cold and dark and had no windows. It also smelled really funny up there. The other one had stairs up to it with really weird cupboards built into the walls all around the room with a skylight. One night my mum was asleep early. I was with my brother playing Xbox while my sisters watched a film. Suddenly, I get chills explaining to my brother I needed to toilet, but something lured me up to the loft bedroom, the one with the stairs, by the way. I walk up the stairs and feel chills down my spine. I see something in the corner and after this don't remember anything. But this is what I got told. I was gone for a good 20 minutes till my older sister came looking for me. She came into the loft bedroom calling my name, checking everything. She looks in the cupboards, which goes all the way along the wall and is deep. I'm sat in the dark at the back corner, just rocking and mumbling. For your information, I never go in there because I'm shit scared of spiders and dark places. She calls my name and sees I'm holding a doll. It's just singing, la 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 la, over and over. I don't respond, just stare. So she leaves me to it, going to the bathroom. Suddenly, I dash out of the cupboard and start going round all the house, 3 stories, turning off each and every light. I scare my little sister so much that she goes into the bathroom with my older sister to hide. I walk around silently scratching all the walls, claiming my name was Edward. Bearing in my mind my mum slept through all of this. I have an evil look in my eyes. I'm freezing to the touch. I have a strange smell coming from me and a dark little smirk on my mouth. I run downstairs and grab a knife. By this time, my sisters have moved from the bathroom into my brother's room, which has a lock. I come back upstairs and start pounding on the door, scratching it, begging them to
Come play.
My brother unlocks his bedroom door and points his BB rifle gun at my head. I'm usually so scared of this because it hurts when it hits you. But I just laugh and put my head against it and said,
Do it. Shoot me.
My brother shits himself trying to slam the door on me. My sister's helping him close it. But apparently I have so much strength I just push it open, and just as I'm about to stab my sister, a light turns on, and I just faintly hear my mum say,
What's going on?
With that, I just remember snapping back. I just look around so confused. How did I get here? Ever since then, all my siblings have been scared of me. I don't remember any of that happening. I just remember the before and after, which is really weird. That house was always haunted, though. We always saw dark figures and stuff would move around. Doors would open and close. Footsteps could be heard walking round at night. It was so creepy. My sister seems to believe I got possessed by a dark entity because of the smell and the way I acted and how I didn't know or remember anything I was doing or did. It still scares me to this day, and it's something we will never forget. What happened to me? Disclaimer. This exact experience was told to me by both my sisters and brother, since I don't remember it, but it will forever haunt me. And I swear it's true. I woke up in hospital with a sister I never had. Now I wish I had stayed in a coma. All I remember from the crash was the sound of screeching metal. It was a wet December, Tuesday, and I was driving to do my weekly grocery shop. David had been begging me to get the bus since my glaucoma had gotten worse. But I refused to listen. I was a perfectly healthy woman at age 72, and I've been driving since my father taught me on the farm at 13. David is going to think this was all my fault, but I'll just make him read the police report. The other driver sped a red light and slammed into me side on. Died instantly, apparently. My car spun out onto the curb and wrapped itself around a street lamp. The whole ordeal lasted less than 5 seconds. I woke up at St. Anne's Hospital a day later after what the doctor told me was a light coma. Cuts and bruises covered my body, especially around my eyes where the airbag had deployed. 2 dark circles and a broken nose made me look like an old peach you'd find at the back of the fridge. Every bone in me felt out of place, and I could barely move. After a brief chat with me, the doctor met a woman at the door. They shook hands before she hobbled over. She was tall and thin with an air of faded glamour. Tightly wound hair, large gold rings, her crooked body wrapped in a woolen shawl. She had a stern but concerned smile.
"How are you, Mary?"
she asked, her voice sounding broken with a deep rasp.
"Who are you?"
I asked.
"It's me,"
she said.
It's
Each guttural word cut through me.
your sister,"
she said. I had never met this woman in my life.
"You must be confused,"
I said. She tilted her head to her shoulder and rubbed the back of her fingers through her hair.
"Oh dear, I think you're the one who is a tad confused. You've been in a nasty accident,"
she said, the pleasantry of her words undercut by the chainsaw of her voice. It was then I noticed the cracks in her glamour. Her eyes were round and bulbous, in a state of constant alarm. Her jaw hung lax, revealing the bottom of yellowing teeth. The white powder she used on her face did little to smooth out the wrinkles on her skin. As she leant over to kiss my forehead, a dank, boggy stench seeped into my broken nose.
"I'm so glad you're okay,"
she whispered. I raised my arm, sending shooting pains up to my shoulder, and pushed her away. It was an exhausting endeavor, and once the woman stepped back, my arm flopped down to the bed as I gasped for air.
"I don't have a sister,"
I said, straining to get the words out.
"The guy you hit died, you know,"
she said, lifting the shawl back over her shoulder, the beads around her wrist clacking together as she did so.
"I want to talk to my son,"
I said. David would be able to sort this mess out. He was logical, like his father. May he rest in peace. David lived in Europe, doing something with the internet. I didn't understand any of it, but it gave my 2 granddaughters a life I could have only dreamed of. We didn't see eye to eye too often. I was too emotional, too reckless for David's tastes. Again, much like his father. But I needed his sensibilities now.
"David's arriving tomorrow, flying back from Zurich just for you,"
said the crooked woman.
"I don't want you here,"
I barked.
"I don't know you."
The crooked woman pursed her lips and wandered over to the side table. She grabbed a plastic cup and filled it with water.
"You're acting like the Princess of Apple Tree Castle,"
she said. How did she know about Apple Tree Castle? That was the nickname I gave to the tree house my father constructed for my 8th birthday. It was my safe place, away from the arguments, the graft and the drama of a working farm. He'd even painted the inside of it an off pink and allowed me to decorate it with the old pillows and blankets from the living room. I'd spent many summer evenings listening to the gentle rustling of the trees. That was until one of my school friends, a girl I can no longer remember, fell from it and seriously hurt herself. The girl's parents were furious and demanded that the treehouse be taken down. I had to watch as my dad dismantled my childhood with each chop of his axe. Now, the woman in my hospital room was telling me that the little girl who left a bloody stain in the mud wasn't some faded memory of a friend. It was my sister. It was her. She pointed to her slack jaw, wobbling her chin with her finger.
"Broke it in 3 places,"
she said. I held my eyes shut. I felt disorientated, and my stomach was doing circuits as if it was still spinning in the crash. I've never had a sister. I have decades of memories to prove it. But how could she have known about my secret haven? Something I haven't spoken about since I was a child.
"I need to eat,"
I said, opening my eyes. The woman was standing over me, a small teaspoon in hand and a confused look on her face. In her other hand was an empty yogurt pot.
"You've just eaten, dear,"
she said. I looked down at the tray in front of me. An empty crisp packet and a few crumbs of bread was all that was left. The sour taste of old yogurt stuck to my tongue.
"You're so forgetful, just like Mama,"
she said, carefully placing the spoon and yogurt on the tray. She picked it up and moved it to the table where several other trays were scattered.
"How long have I been here for?"
I asked. She placed her hands on her hips.
"How many times do I have to tell you? A couple of days,"
she said. My head throbbed and my jaw ached.
"And David will be here tomorrow."
The crooked woman sat down on the sofa, just far away enough so my eyes couldn't focus on her. She faded in and out of the shadow.
"It'll be so lovely to see him again." "Did the man in the other car?"
I said, trailing off.
"Yes, instantly, apparently,"
said the woman.
"No pain, just immediate nothingness. Must be nice, in a way."
The throbbing in my head turned into a searing pain behind my eyes. Darkness crept across my vision, making it feel as if I was staring down an endless tunnel. Everything hurt. I wanted to be free of this pain, of this awful place. I yearned for nothingness. But I was trapped here with this woman, my sister. I thought I had been alone for so long, my entire life, but she had supposedly been with me every step of the way. She should understand me better than anyone else.
What was Dad's nickname for me?"
I asked.
"Minnie, like the mouse,"
said the dark nurse. Was that right? I didn't remember anymore.
"I'm so tired,"
I said.
"Then sleep. Tell me about Mum and Dad,"
I said, shutting my eyes. She began, but it was like she was describing my parents from an old photograph. Her words were blurry and unfocused, with small details that felt off. She said that our father had a crook in his nose, but I had never noticed it, and our mother's parting in her hair was on the left, not the right, as I remembered. Was that right? Had I just not paid them all that much attention? Too busy wrapped up in my own drama and emotions? She moved on to stories of our winter getaways, driving up to Scotland in the run-down Volkswagen camper van. Although it wasn't a VW, it was a Ford. I remember the little blue logo on the bumper. We went to our favourite campsite in Edinburgh, but I've never been to Edinburgh. Dad used to say it was too expensive, so we'd drive further to Glasgow. Our dog, Remy, or was it Timbo, loved to sit with us in the back seat. These stories were almost true, so close that I wished they had been. That I had a sister. That this whole mess made sense. All I remember from the crash is the sound of screeching metal. I woke up in complete nothingness. Is this what the other driver felt as his face passed through the steering wheel? But the dull green light of the fire alarm brought me back to my hospital room. Dark shapes began to appear as my eyes slowly got used to the dark. The story stopped, but they'd been replaced by something more sinister. Slow, gurgling breaths came from the darkness, like the sputtering engine of an idle camper van. In the corner of my room, by the sofa, I could make out a blurry figure in the shadows. It stood motionless, head turned towards me. "You're not my sister, are you?" The smell of sitting water and mud crept from the darkness, but the figure remained still.
"I am now."
I kicked off my duvet, slapped my aching hand against the cables jabbed in my arm, and yanked them out. I had to leave, escape the darkness. The machine let out a digital scream. Its screen lit up, casting stark shadows across the floor in front of me and barely illuminating the door at the other end of the room. The shadows undulated around me. Was it from the screen or the crooked woman creeping closer towards me? I dropped my naked feet down on the cold tiles, barely steadying myself. My vision blurred, and the stabbing pain behind my eyes returned. I thought I was about to throw up, but instead, I took my first step forward, then a second. Slowly but surely I headed towards the door. Each step felt heavier than the last.
Don't.
Came a gargling whisper. A dark blur moved around the corner of my eyes. A hand outstretched. I felt a moist touch brush against my left shoulder. Pops and crackles erupted in my chest as my breaths became strained. They were turning thick and humid. My voice rasped as I struggled towards the door. It was like I was drowning in my own bile. I fell to my hands and knees. My body was failing me. I spat on the floor and tried to continue on, but I collapsed in a few seconds. I felt the wet moisture crawl across my body as something whispered in my ear.
It's okay now. You're here now.
I jolted awake back in my hospital bed. The light was blinding, and the shooting pains in my brain returned. My ears rang out with a high-pitched tone. I squeezed my eyes shut and focused on my gasping breaths. I touched my face and felt the warm plastic of an oxygen mask. I was safe. After a few seconds, my breathing slowed, but the pain and screams in my ears remained. I opened my eyes to see David sitting on a chair by the door, furiously talking on the phone. He hadn't noticed me waking up. I looked around the room. It was just him. I felt a warm glow rush over me, a sheer sense of joy that I hadn't felt in a long time. David glanced over at me and realized I was awake. He smiled. Then the door opened. A crooked arm snuck in, and the rest of her body followed with it. The woman who thought she was my sister peered her head around with a warm smile. I held my mask tight as my lungs tightened, pointing a finger at the woman. Screaming for breaths, my ears howled. David got up and stormed over to the woman. He shook his head. It looked like he was yelling. She was yelling back. Did he have no clue who she was either? My sister was just an insane woman. She was disturbed, to be sure, but at least it made sense. But then he crumpled into her embrace. His shoulders shrugged as he let out bellowing cries. She rubbed his back gently, eyes firmly fixed on me, a gentle smile on her face. I ripped off the oxygen mask, trying with all my might to scream, but only rasping gargles came out. David ran over, drying his face with his shirt. He looked at me with genuine concern, a deep pain, as he held onto my shoulders firmly. "Shh, it's okay. You're here now," he said. I looked up at his big brown eyes. It was then I remembered. My son's eyes were green. I pulled something weird out of my belly button. I'm kind of freaking out after this morning, with the blood and all, but let me explain the last few days first. I've always had a little piece of dead grey skin in my belly button, like a fish scale or something. It's an innie, by the way, as we called them as kids, versus an outie, like some kind of abnormal cyclops staring out at everyone during shirtless summer days. I always wanted the outie. Anyway, I've had it my entire life, like a piece of belly button lint that fossilized along the way. I assumed it was part of the umbilical cord that stayed attached, withered and dried. I tried a few times to dislodge it because of my obsessive nature, picking at it with a pinky nail or swabbing away with a Q-tip. This wasn't daily or anything, just whenever I happened to remember to wash it in the shower, or notice the extra flab surrounding it. A bit more of that lately, which is why I've been dwelling on it more. Too much comfort eating, I guess. Day before yesterday, I was obsessing over it more than usual, to the point my belly button and surrounding skin was pink from scratching. I went into the bathroom of my apartment, took out tweezers from the medicine cabinet, and set out to do some excavating. I was super careful and kept picturing someone bumping into me with the door and me jamming the tweezers into my guts. I live alone, by the way. The tips of the two stainless steel tweezer prongs gently pinched together on the grey flake. I squeezed a little harder to see if any nerves were connected, but felt nothing. I gave a gentle tug, again fearing a sharp pain that never came. The piece of dried skin didn't move. I pulled harder, pinched tighter, but kept everything controlled. It felt like my entire belly button was pulling outward, so I started wiggling the tweezers back and forth in an attempt to dislodge it. That worked. It slowly pulled up to the side, then to the other side, and with a slight popping movement came free. Something apparently tore, because there was a pinch of pain and a small speckle of blood. I winced and quickly dabbed it with a tissue. That did the trick. I can't explain the mad feeling of gratification that pulsed through me, like leveling up after an impossible boss battle or popping that Mount Vesuvius on your forehead, only 1,000,000 times better. The elated feeling only lasted a second, though, until I looked at what was caught in my tweezers. It had hair. I peered closer and swear there were little whitish bits, like grains of sand, in an upper and lower row, and 2 slits above those. The hair was bristly, individual barbs that stuck out in a single strip along the top. I shivered. For whatever reason, I wanted to keep it, like a patient keeping their kidney stone. It had been with me, a part of me, for so many years. Dumb, I know. Lame even more so. I dropped it into a small masonry jar and set it on a shelf in the living room. I didn't have any trophies or medals for sports to display because I sucked, but this felt like a victory. Years of battle trying to dig this thing out, and I finally did it. For the rest of the day, I couldn't help but admire my handiwork every time I walked past the shelf to go to the kitchen. Mr. Umbilical. He even looked like a little scrunched-up face with a punk rock hairdo. Yes, I realize I need a life, but remote work, you know. At first you feel lonely, even with the work chat pinging away. But then the outside world starts to feel like a dream, grocery shopping like a field trip, and then it's not that bad, so don't judge too hard. At least it wasn't a sex doll. Yesterday morning was rough. Town hall meeting on Zoom, and they made us be on camera. The worst. I took on the zombie death stare at my computer monitor, afraid to look at the camera lens, and watched all my co-workers and the executives in their little talking head boxes. I can't tell what they discussed. After it was over, I headed for the kitchen. Another cup of coffee was definitely in order after that. I glanced at Mr. Umbilical and stopped, leaning in closely to look through the mason jar. I swayed back and forth to see if it was a trick of the glass, a distortion, but it held. The punky hair, 2 rows of white teeth and 2 little beads above them, black as oil, right where the slits had been. What the frick? I said out loud. Staring hard at the jar without blinking, Mr. Umbilical stared right back. A blinking contest from hell. I straightened and walked to the kitchen, keeping my head turned and eyes on the jar until I was at the counter. I definitely need to get out more, I thought. The coffee poured steamed into my today's a Control-Alt-Delete kind of day mug. I walked back to the shelf and looked at the thing with eyes in the mason jar. I knew they weren't really eyes, and it probably wasn't even umbilical cord. More likely an accumulation of gunk that started forming when I was a kid and didn't know the merits of good hygiene. Damn, that coffee tasted good. It got me through the rest of the morning, and an energy drink helped me finish off the day. When I woke up this morning, the craving for coffee was gone, which was weird, because that's usually the first thought I have, my coffee fix, followed by thinking today's the day I finally give notice at the job. I felt a sharp twinge of pain when I sat up in bed and looked down at the white sheets swirling around my torso. They had red on them. I yanked the sheets back and stared down at my belly button. Rivulets of blood trickling out of the hole and a red smear around it. It must have tore worse than I thought. I went cold, but not because of the blood. The health insurance from my job was a joke, and I definitely couldn't afford an emergency room visit. I ran into the bathroom, jostled the various bottles under the sink, and pulled out the hydrogen peroxide. I sat on the toilet seat, leaned back so my belly button was almost horizontal, and poured the peroxide into it. Holy hell, did that burn and fizz up. I let it soak a minute and then mopped it up with a wad of toilet paper. What a relief. No more blood. I couldn't see any obvious damage inside, and the prickling pain had stopped. I leaned back against the toilet tank and let out a deep sigh. At least it was Saturday. Once the drama was over, my foggy brain bullhorned that we hadn't had coffee yet, and I could already feel a caffeine-deprived headache coming on. I finished in the bathroom, got dressed, and walked through the living room. I glanced at the shelf, middle finger fully deployed, and frowned. The mason jar was empty.